Welcome to the Rocky Road Podcast, brought to you by Rockbusters, with your host, Dennis Wager. Dennis is a best-selling author and an expert in demolition, rock, and concrete breaking, as well as a professional blaster. He is also president of Rockbusters Incorporated, along with his son, Brian. On the podcast, you'll hear exciting stories of how these challenge types of rock and concrete jobs are done. You learn about the uses of expanding grout and explosive devices. But furthermore, you'll hear about some of the hurdles and struggles entrepreneurs and business owners have had along the way, how they got started, and how they broke through the obstacles and found the path to success. Along with that, some insight for young people and people wanting to get into the industry. So listen in. I hope you enjoy the show. Now, here's Dennis Wager.
Hi there, everybody. Thanks for joining in. I want to welcome to the show Ron Richey, who's a good friend of mine and the CEO of Staten Companies, who is a large demolition company from Eugene, Oregon. Welcome to the show, Ron.
Thanks, Dennis.
How are you doing today?
Excellent. Got a little snow on the ground and surprises, but that's fine.
Wow, snow, eh? I didn't think that would happen this time of year. We've been actually pretty good up here.
Well, we beat you then, huh?
You did, yeah. Yeah, so we've known each other for many, many years, and maybe you could just tell us a bit about yourself, your background, how you got started in the demolition industry.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's a long route to get here, but basically it started with Roto-Rooter. I was working for Roto-Rooter. I became an excellent, I became number one in the number two business, you know?
Yeah.
And I started, as I learned that, I learned that there were a lot of opportunities to fix things that were broken. So I started fixing broken sewer lines, and I do it with a shovel. Then I started installing sewer lines, and I rented a backhoe and got in the site work business from there, and lasted about, I did about 5 or 6 years worth of site work business and grew to, like half a dozen employees and a couple dump trucks and a backhoe and a couple cats. And then the Jimmy Carter bubble hit with 21 or 22% interest rates in like 1980, I don't know what it was, 85, something like that. And business just fell apart. My wife was pregnant, going to have another baby, and she said, she was working at the time. She said, I don't want to work with this baby. And I said, okay, I'll get a job and with a steady income. And I'd done work for Staten, went to Staten and got a job there. And that's how I actually got into the demolition business, was got a job with Staten, and my wife quit work, had the baby and all that. Happy times for her. And nice. The rest is history.
And how did Staten get started in it?
Well, Leonard and Jeannie Staten started this business in 1971. I started with them, and I went to work for them. I'm sure it was 83 now, because that's because I just hit my 40-year anniversary here. So they started in 1971, and Leonard worked for a site work company called Hal Bailey Construction, and he got tired of that, and he just up and bid direct at old Springfield High School, which here in Eugene, we have Eugene and Springfield, sister cities essentially. And so he bid that, got that job, and that's how he started the demolition business. And they did that for many, many years until I went to work for them in 83. And then we kind of started more site work at Staten. And then the next step was they moved me into bidding and doing the demolition work instead of site work, because site work still wasn't very profitable. So that's how I got into Staten, and I learned the demolition business by doing site work, but I cross over back and forth. So it takes a while to learn demolition, but because I was in the company, I was always helping out on demolition projects. So that's how I got into Staten and how I learned to do the demolition process.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's kind of the same as me. I got into doing excavating and then some demolition, and I just enjoyed the demolition more.
I do too. It was a perfect match for me.
Yeah. My first kind of bigger purchase was my G18 concrete cruncher. That kind of was a lot more fun to go and run that than just dig dirt.
I agree.
And yeah, we were able to take that and start to demo buildings, and we were able to do some secondary concrete crushing and stuff like that. And yeah, you can see the extra money in it too. As soon as you put the attachment on, the rate goes up, which you got to like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of would be the typical job for you guys today?
Well, we do anything, of course, any demolition. We like the larger jobs, so we do a lot of, there's a lot of mills out here on the West Coast, so there's always work at mills. I'd say that's one of the two biggest bread and butter jobs that we have is mill work. The second one was bridge demolition work that started in the late 1990s. The federal government passed transportation laws or grants for replacement. I think they replaced every bridge in Oregon and Washington. And I think we did like 250 of them.
Wow.
Over a period of 10 years or 15 years or so. And that was very lucrative for us. So and we still do that. In fact, we got two or three jobs coming up. That never ends. They did all the really bad, the oldest bridges were the ones like on the coast over all the rivers and the valleys. And the major freeway bridges were in pretty good shape because they were newer. But all those old ones, boy, they were in bad shape, and so they just started replacing them. And we just got lots of experience doing it. It was fun to learn, and tough to do sometimes. But it was a really good niche for us.
Yeah, I would imagine they'd be tough to do. Like, how would you actually go about doing your first bridge? Like, where did all the thoughts come from to how to catch the concrete and whatnot so it doesn't fall in the river? Or how did you develop all that part?
Yeah, that's driven by the DOTs. They tell us what you can and can't do. It got progressively worse. You couldn't drop anything in the water. The later in life, we got into the bridge demolition. But at first, you just dropped everything in the river and dug it out. And we just go across it, and we would make false work that would hold us up, and we just wreck a bridge, drop it in the water. And most of the time, except for the channels that were deep, you could just walk on the concrete debris that you just wrecked into the river, keep hopscotching it behind you to shore, and haul it off. And there wasn't much cleanup. Well, that only lasted about 4 or 5 years before they said, no, you can't drop anything in the water. So you got to build a bridge under the bridge to catch everything, or you got to saw, cut, and pick pieces off. And so, yeah, you kind of look at as they thought the fish were adversely affected, which I don't think so. I've never seen a fish yet that couldn't outswim a piece of concrete, So
yeah,
but that was the big deal, was protecting the environment and the aquatic species. And so we adjusted, and it's worked out well. We're still doing it, and we still love that work. Same with the mill work. Lots of commercial work. We just finished a hospital. We got a huge rest home coming up, senior home, a big motel complex and restaurant complex that we're doing now. So it's just a mix of retail, commercial, and industrial.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Like now, kind of at our age and this many years in business, we're able to look back to the old days of how things were done and compare that to how they are done now. And it just makes you wonder what it's going to be like 10, 20, 30 years from now, right? Like, are those, regulations going to be?
I think they'll probably try to pass that, the government will pass more rules. I don't think they can be much more restrictive. We protect our employees. We protect the environment. We protect the public. We monitor for dust, and in the dust we're monitoring for lead and for respiratory issue, anything like cement, you name it. We're monitoring, and of course then we're suppressing it. That with water. So
with water, yeah.
So yeah, it's. I don't think they can get any. I suppose they can get more strict, but I think they've got all the bases covered for employee and public protection right now.
But I'm sure that must be the famous last words they said 40 years ago too, right?
Yeah, we never dreamed it would be like this.
Never dreamed to be like this. Yeah. So yeah, who knows? So what types of equipment do you guys have, or like how many employees do you have, or what's the kind of makeup of the company?
Yeah, we range 65 to 70 employees, and We do interior work. We'll sometimes have 25 or 30 guys in that work. Like there's a lot of colleges out here, and they're always changing something. They always need to take out 2 floors of everything except for the concrete slab, and then they remodel. Or you got the inside of a store or whatever it is. That's one group. Then we have the structural group, and of course we do anything structural, whether it's a building or a bridge or a dam. We do it, and the equipment that we use, we have probably 20, 22, 23 pieces of big equipment. That's 60,000 pound to 110 or so thousand pound excavators, and then we have a bunch of smaller stuff for smaller work. Specifically the interior division, where they're inside buildings and they're gutting out interiors and they're shoving everything to one spot in the building and dumping it down, shoot down into a drop box or something like that. So we got a lot of little equipment too, probably with skid steers and minis and whatever else kind of stuff we got. They got all kinds of stuff out there. There's probably about 20 or 30 of those little pieces too. And so it's, there's, a lot of pieces of equipment. And then we have drop box service and a bunch of boxes. And of course, a dozen or so over the road trucks with semi trailers that are in dumps, flatbeds. You name it. That's about the extent.
And you were saying you added a couple of trucks for saw cutting too now.
Yeah, we're doing saw cutting now too. We got 2 trucks doing saw cutting. It's a necessity in the interior division because they're always cutting something. So we just went with 1 truck because it was hard to get the saw cutting done when you wanted it done. So we did that, and that helped a lot. And then there was so much demand, they did another one. So yeah, we do saw cutting. We also have a forestry division with 5 guys in that goes up. They have these what they call masticators. They're on skid steers and excavators, like gigantic rototillers that eat up wood. So they'll shred a whole tree down to the ground instead of sawing it down, right? And leave the mulch there on the ground. And there's this thing called, they have these what do they call these? Oak groves down here in central Oregon on the west side here. And they're protected or something. It's like a strange thing by the government. So you got to go in there and clear out all the Scotch broom, all the fir trees, anything that invades the oak trees area. And it's just a huge business right now. So, yeah, we got that forestry division. What else do we got? Interior, structural, drop box service. I'm probably missing something. Let me see if I got something wrote down here. No, I think that covers everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's a lot of growth over the years.
Yeah, a lot of growth. All of these other little divisions have been so far very profitable. The forestry division has been a little slow. Not slow. They aren't slow. It's just that it takes a while to get the word out and get these like an 1,800 acre job or something like that, where you're there for 2 months, and it's big dollar,
right?
Lots of money involved, to do this work. But these guys that are doing it, they just write checks out, and it's very, very lucrative.
So how do you go about finding that work when you decided to get into that new division?
We had an employee that worked for us that went to work for somebody else, and he came back to work for us, and he had been doing some work for another contractor in Eastern Oregon doing this kind of work, but his home was back here, so he wanted to be back here, based out here. And basically, he was based in Eastern Oregon, and he grew up there, but his family's back here. So we talked to him about it. He said, well, we should just start a division. And so his name is Jason. And so Jason did that, got it going, him and his son, and now they got 3 or 4 guys working for him. And
that's good.
Yeah, it's really interesting. They're up in the woods on their own. I mean, they're so far up out of civilization. It's like, you have to take everything with you, and some have to have some kind of communication, like satellite phone or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but I've not on one of the jobs yet, but one of these days.
Yeah, we've done a few of these remote jobs. Like I did one in the Grand Canyon, where it's all helicopter access. So we have air compressors now, which are smaller, and they have a single point hook. So you're able to just grab them with a helicopter, and all of the drills and stuff can be flown in. Same with some of the mountaintop stuff. We did some jobs that were on Vancouver Island for radar towers where it's all helicopter access.
Wow. That
And
sounds
it's kind of
very
different scene,
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets very expensive, and it's the little things that kind of make a difference. Like even the weight of the compressors, the ones that we have are 900 pounds, where an average tow behind is about 2,800 pounds, which means not much when you're towing it with a pickup truck, but when you're flying it, it means you either have to have a small helicopter, which is $2,000 or $3,000 an hour, or a bigger one, which is $5,000 or $6,000 an hour. And every time you got to move it in and drop it off, and then the helicopter's got to fly home, and then when you want to come out, he's got to fly in and pick it up. So it's a big bill every time that you even just make that adjustment to the right equipment.
Yeah. What were you drilling for? Or
rock. So we drill rock, and we're helping in the Grand Canyon with trenching. They did a lot of trenching for a new pipeline for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade.
Oh.
And everything had to be flown in. There was no blasting allowed, so they used the expanding grout. And now they have another project coming up. They're putting in a new water line from the north rim to the south rim. So they're going to be going again on another 2-year project. But also like little things, like they decided that, hey, they want to build a chain link fence around one of the cabins at the Phantom Ranch at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So it's rock. So how are you going to do it? You can't really just, shovel or pick your way through rock. So you have to drill it. So we have tools where you can start off with an 1.5 inch hole, and then you can have like a reamer bit, which is kind of like the pilot on the bottom, and it goes out to a bigger bit. So you can drill a 3-inch from that, and then a 4.5 inch from that, and then you cement in your fence post.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you fly in the compressor, you fly in the drills, and you're set up. It's all remote, and you can do whatever you want.
Oh man. Were you in the canyon or up on top, or where were you?
Right in the canyon, right at the bottom.
Really? Oh,
went down there for a few days to work with. Yeah, so I had to work with an archaeologist because who knows what you might find from millions of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that was pretty cool. Yeah, and then when we met was like I think in New York, right when I joined the board of directors for the NDA, the National Demolition Association, and you were already a member. Yeah, and then that kind of is how we got to know each other. That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. Yeah, I was trying to remember when it was in New York that we met, and I love New York. We went. I think we had 2 or 3 meetings there over the years, and that was always a fun experience going back there.
Yeah, it was really an eye opener for me because being in Vancouver, like our demolition, industry at that time was very small. I mean, we only had maybe a handful of guys. And there was only one guy that was buying the timber, Carl from Vancouver Timber, and he was only paying 50 cents a board foot. And then when I met you, you're asking me the questions, oh, what are you doing? What projects you got going? And I was telling you about the school, and you're asking about the timber, how much I got. And I said 50 cents. And then you said, oh, hey, you should call my guy Shannon in Grants Pass. He pays me $1. He's probably sure to pay you $1 or the same, And I did. And just that one, for me, I was just starting off then, and I was really small, and I thought, okay, well, 50 cents a foot is, I forget how much money for the project, but that was like kind of your gravy money, but just that extra, from Shannon was about $30,000, and I'm thinking about it like, oh man, the trip to New York is expensive. The hotel's like $3,000. How am I affording all this? And then you just come away with that one bit of knowledge, like, oh, here's a phone number, phone this guy.
Yeah.
And it makes a big difference, right? Like the networking and the relationships that you build are just so valuable.
That's right. I agree with that 100%. The networking is probably one of the best things you can do in demolition.
Yeah. It's it helps a lot. So what are some of the obstacles and hurdles that you guys have come through over the years? Anything come to mind?
Well, in the I'm trying to figure out what year this was. It got really slow one year. I mean, really bad. So I went like a whole year, and I think it was 1996 or might have been 97, something like that. Man, I bid everything that came up, and I was no better than, I never was first. I was no better than second or third, most of the time third or fourth even. It was just a year of nothing happening. It was horrible. So I started... That was the worst thing, and we had good equipment, good employees, but not very many. We weren't very big back then, and so I started looking farther and farther out, and that was made possible by the internet, because back before the internet, we had a computer, but didn't have an internet. You know, you could type stuff up on your computer. But then you start
Yeah.
being able to figure out how to find jobs in Washington and Idaho and Oregon and Northern California. So pretty soon I was traveling quite a bit, finding work, and then that worked, and we were finding work. Some of it was a
Okay.
long ways away. And I had gotten my pilot's license in 1995 here locally, and started flying myself around in small planes. And I was able to cover a lot of territory, and still be back home. Whereas before, I just drive. You just drive for 3 days, and you go up to Spokane and back
Right.
over to Seattle, down south. I'd be just looking at specific jobs, the ones that were advertised. So that turned out to be a benefit, to be able to get around and find jobs that weren't so close to home. It was kind of difficult for the employees to accept a change where they were out of town, but they were making good money and they were staying busy, and they grew used to it, and that worked out pretty good. So we did that for a long time, and then we just got used to working with that bridge project that came out from the government to fix all the bridges. That was all over too. So that having my pilot's license worked pretty good, and we stayed busy and we were profitable. And then it got to a point where we're so busy. When I was flying, I was thinking about work, and when I was working, I was thinking about flying, because you got to prepare for both. They're both very intense.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and then finally I talked to Jeannie Staten and convinced her to let me hire a pilot, and then we bought a twin engine pressurized plane, so we could fly in, worse weather. It was what it boils down to. Everybody hates bad weather in an airplane.
Yeah.
But if you have a pilot, he knows what to do. Anyway, I could make all those routes, and I could make them in the winter, and I could pick up those jobs. So that was probably the big turnaround for us. The worst was before it. We just didn't have the breadth of work to bid. You couldn't drive all those places. So that worked out really good for us, and we ran the progression of planes bigger and bigger and faster, and it worked pretty good till we had I bought a little Citation jet, and that was on budget. I had 2.5 years, and it was hitting all the numbers. I had a 5-year plan for it, and then we blew up an engine, $300,000, and so
Wow.
oh no, this is bad, and we. So I rented. You can rent jet engines, in case you didn't know. So I rented a jet engine, and I had about 50 or 60 hours left on that engine to rent, and I just had to make a decision: am I getting rid of the plane, or am I going to fix the engine? And finally, at the end, with the internet, you can do so much more now. You don't have to visit the jobs nearly as much. You can find pictures and videos everywhere of everything. So yeah, we finally just sold the plane, and we're down to. We don't fly much. If I fly somewhere, I just charter a plane. But most of the time, I just do a commercial. Well, of course, with COVID, I didn't fly anywhere. I didn't want to go anywhere.
Yeah. Kind of different.
So it wasn't a big issue, but it was real. That was when the company grew the most, is when we were covering all that territory. It was a little difficult for us to do that, but with the help of my two sons that work here, they're really good, and they took over a whole lot of that work that required more than one person to do, and they're just kicking butt now. So I'm really happy about that. So we're still performing all that work in all those places, but it's not just me; it's 3 of us, so it's easy to do.
Yeah, and then at some point you were able to buy Jeannie out and just take it over completely yourself now, right?
She's a little older than me. I'm 70. I'll be 70. I'm 73 next month. And she was a little older than me, and I talked to her a couple of times, and I wound up having about 45% interest in it. And finally, one time she was open to it, and so I bought her out, and then I bought the property from her, and so now it's just owned by state, and my two sons are partners now. Sam and Dan, both of those guys are ex-military guys, really sharp guys, very good, way smarter than I ever was. And I don't worry about anything, because whatever they do, they're going to do it well. And I couldn't be happier.
So would you say it's just a matter of kind of keeping your nose down and pushing through everything when the work gets lean or times get harder? Just kind of
I think the diversification has helped us. We have not slowed down this is no joke. I don't think we've slowed down in 8 years that I can remember, maybe 7, maybe 10. I don't even know, but it hasn't slowed down at all. And I keep expecting the hammer to drop, and it's not dropping. So we were fortunate enough to be able to diversify, buy some property, and put some rentals up, and you know what I mean, and just keep the cash flow going, and use your money in a common sense, practical, and safe way, and make your money work for you. So I'm knocking on wood. This is formica, but it's wood underneath.
It's wood somewhere.
Because I'm very fortunate. So, but the two boys, Sam and Dan, are just excellent, and
Awesome.
the company is Tracy Wright, who's been here. She came here in '84. I came here in '83. And she's still here, so she runs the office, and that takes care of you can it's like taking care of an office yourself. You just almost can't do it. So she's just on top of that. That's a great benefit for Staten too.
Yeah, you need that asset for sure. Oh, that's awesome though. That's really good to hear. Nice to see that you're able to bring your kids in and have it kind of more, family oriented and have everybody work together. That's what I'm doing with my son Brian too. So I think. Also about the expanding grout, we know you have this job coming up, this bridge that you're going to use the grout on. And has there been any other jobs in the past that you've had success with grout on?
I've used it a few times, and I use it where there's restricted access, where I can't get a machine down underneath something to hammer something out. And I use it underwater. And so the few times I've used it, it's always, almost all of them, I think, have been on bridge jobs where I've drilled down, got a small drill, drilled down and cracked, and then just dug the concrete out. It's all reinforced concrete. We got to have a job coming up in Corvallis this year in crossing the Willamette River, and it's got an old swing bridge, like not a drawbridge, but a bridge that swings out and back, on a 25-foot diameter concrete pillar that goes down 40 feet to the mud line. It's non-reinforced, but we're going to drill that and crack it, because that's the only way we're going to get that concrete broken up. I mean, we could put a hammer down there underwater with a camera, but that, 30 to 40 feet deep, it ain't going to work.
Yeah.
So we're going to drill that and crack it. That'll be a big job for the driller and the crackers. But I already know it's going to work. That thing has been, the drilling and cracking has been very successful on piers underwater for bridges. So I'm expecting the same out of this deal.
Yeah, I think so too. Just out of curiosity, do you have any kind of information on like how much an hour? I mean, how much an hour a hammer is on a whatever size, 200 or 400, but any kind of information about how much it would cost per cubic yard of concrete broken? I
haven't figured anything on a per yard basis, but what happens when we select drilling and cracking, it was probably half the cost of conventional, because you're aiming your hammer bit. You're going to break your bit off when you're doing that. If you're not doing this and you're doing this because you can't go up, you're going to break it. It's not a point of cost. It's a point of getting it done and not breaking stuff. You can't hardly beat hammers for breaking concrete. The new hammers today are phenomenally powerful and a lot smaller. But if you have room, if you don't have room, then you're stuck. Drilling and cracking is the only way to go. The only other way, we do wire sawing too, but that's way more expensive than drilling and cracking.
That's way more expensive.
Way more expensive. It's almost impossible to price it. It's so expensive. So the drilling.
So on a bigger job, would it?
Go ahead.
Yeah, on a bigger job, would it be like a 400 size machine you would send, or would it be a 200 or 300 size?
Yeah, 300 and 400 size machines. Yeah, that we send up there. Yeah, and with a hammer on them, they're 380 or 450 or whatever an hour. So they are really good. But when you got to put an air kit on them and go underwater, and you're not sure you got your bit straight down, it could be crooked. You break a bit off in the concrete. You know the story.
Yeah, what's a bit cost? $3 or $4 grand too, right?
Oh yeah, it's huge cost. You got to take spare. We got to some kind of big metal box full of bits, just in case we take them with us wherever we go, and they're expensive to stock. So
yeah. So what we went through, you and I, on this kind of estimate here was trying to figure out, do we do the drilling where the pattern's tight together so you don't have any hammering, or do we kind of space it out a little bit further apart so you crack most of it, but you might have a little bit of hammering to finish off? And that's what I find kind of fun, is you can tailor it to what you want to accomplish, right?
Yeah.
Like we can drill bigger diameter holes closer together. You don't have any hammering. You just dig it out. Like we just did a job here in West Bend to put in a pool, and there was a huge rock. Well, it was the mountain. It wasn't just a rock, but the side of the mountain came out where the guy wanted us to put his pool. So we took out a rock that was, say, 60 feet by 4 feet deep and 20 feet wide. And we just drilled it and poured it. We waited on that one. I think we waited about a week or week and a half. They just came back into the machine and just scooped it all out, put it in the truck.
I think that's what we're going to do on this bridge up in Corvallis up there, going over the river. Yeah. We're gonna try to get it all broken up.
Yeah, with the drill pattern that we came up with, you'll be able to do that. I'm sure.
That would be great.
Yeah. Yeah. So any advice you could give to young people wanting to get into the demolition business or into the demolition work as a career?
Yeah, it's like anything that's technical. It takes a while to learn it. It really takes us 5 years to get somebody set up where they're really good at all phases of demolition. The first year is just learning what not to do. And that's usually you go in as a laborer, like running fire hose, sweeping, picking up tools, run a skid steer, scoop stuff up, it's watching, observing, and the guys that observe and watch learn it fast. And then once they get on a piece of equipment, you got to learn how to run a piece of equipment without breaking it or hurting yourself, as you know. Powerful equipment, grabbing onto something with a piece of rebar and it slings up like a whipping snake and hits your cab. Yeah. And if you're not protected up, there's lots of stories of guys getting hurt or killed in excavators because they weren't controlling the energy. So it takes a while to train them, but if they want to get into it, it's a good field. Once you learn demolition, you can go anywhere and get a job.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, that's awesome. I think that kind of wraps it up, and I just want to say thanks so much for joining us and being a part of the show. It's great to have you on, and nice to see you and talk to you.
Same here. You're a good friend, buddy. I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you would like to be a guest on a future episode and tell us your story, visit our website at www.rockbusters.com. If you have a project and would like to learn more about our products, or if you're interested in partnering with us and becoming a distributor, give us a call. Thanks again. We appreciate your support.